Hey guys, so we're going to look at PNF stretching. PNF stretching is usually done by a second person, and it's also very advanced. I'm not really sure if this is something that you're going to want to do unless you already understand PNF stretching and have done it with someone else or are capable of practicing it yourself. So it's either just a video on an interesting subject or it's something you can practically use. If you do decide to practically use it, then I would go very, very light. I think I would probably recommend that you already understand PNF stretching a little bit before you do. So here's the subject basically, is that when you try to stretch, there's a couple of things going on. Is you're moving through the range of motion in your joint, you're also asking the muscles and the connective tissue to go to a certain length basically. In the muscle there is something called Golgi tendon organ, and the Golgi tendon organ has a role where it prevents the muscle from becoming too long, basically, in order to protect it. So it can't go too long, otherwise it will tear. So there is a range at which your muscle starts to react and to prevent you from kind of going further. What happens with PNF stretching is that we try to switch that off, because the Golgi tendon organ knows that its job is not to allow the muscle to get longer or too long for damage. And so it creates a kind of inhibition. It stops the muscle getting beyond a certain length. However, actually interestingly enough, that's like throwing the brakes on. And if at that time the muscle really needs that length, this process that's designed to prevent injury could lead to injury. And so it also has a way of kind of detecting an overload situation and switching off. And this is why it's advanced, is that you are switching off a defense mechanism in the muscle in order to gain a little extra range. So you then need to know how not to abuse that. So, as I say, the video is either an interesting discussion on how to get more range from your stretch. If you're used to PNF stretching with someone else, then you could use this video to consider how you might introduce a band, which would put you in a position to do it yourself. But the way that you do switch that defense mechanism off in order to get a little bit more range is that you create muscle tension. So you're up in the stretch, let's say that you use your hamstrings and your back at, your legs in the air, that's 90 degrees, and this is it a little bit further. So you get to 90 degrees and you're comfortable, the muscle isn't straining, it's not too much. And then what you do when you're with someone else is someone applies a bit of resistance and you power into the stretch gently, remember, so you don't want to avoid injury. By putting that muscle tension on and holding it, you hold it for anything from 10 to 20 seconds, but the muscle energy must be in the muscle you're trying to stretch, and you do have to keep it constant and on. And then when you switch it off, you'll find that your muscle can go for even more range quite comfortably, whereas before it couldn't go further in comfort. What's happened there is that you've triggered a kind of switch off of the defense mechanism of the Golgi tendon organ or the GTO. Now that that's off, you mustn't injure your muscle. You must only take advantage of it a very small amount. And this is PNF stretching. It's usually done because someone resists your leg as you try to pull down, and then they gently move you a little bit further than you could go. This is a good way to increase range and to get extra flexibility. As I've said, there's an element of risk if you take advantage of that space in which the defense mechanism's down. So how do you do it with a band? Let's have a look. So here we are. I'm going to get into a position. I'm going to use this band to get myself into my hamstring stretch. This is a purple band, and I think I would suggest probably a lighter one, like either a Theora band, which is much more sort of physio type of thing, or the thinner kind of red band that's in here. But let me get into the hamstring stretch position. So this is good for me anyway, because here I can get my hamstring into an inert position of stretch. Yeah. So if we were stood up and stretching, I'll show you that in a minute. We'll come back to it. I might put my leg on a bench and then tip my hips back in order to get this stretch. Yeah. And so the band, before I put any muscle energy into it, already holds me in a good stretch position. So this is pretty interesting to start with. However, what I'm now going to do is power into it a little bit. So at this point, I can tell you that I'm filming this at like 9 o'clock in the morning. and I went running yesterday, so definitely I'm feeling at the end range of my comfortable stretch. I'm just going to power in lightly, so I'm now putting tension against the band. If there were someone resisting me here, it would be exactly the same thing. I'm switching hamstring energy on, that's it, getting it down, and then keep it up, and keep going. What I want to do is kind of tire that muscle out a little bit. There we go. Keep going. That's it. Don't want to damage it. And then I'm going to relax. GCO switches off, and I can go much further back. Yeah. And now my comfortable end range has moved on by an inch or two, and I could then use that. I actually don't have to go too much further because I can simply relax better into the stretch. If I want to, I can push myself away so that I can allow the band to hold me in this new, slightly promoted or this sort of greater stretch range, and then I can do it again, switch on, get hamstring on, that's it, there we go, power, keep the hamstring on. I'm going to keep going, and actually what this does is it creates a lot of tension in the muscle whilst it's at length. Keep it working, and then the Golgi tendon organ allows for greater range of motion, and I take advantage of it for my stretch, but not too much. There we go. So yeah, so there you go. It is an advanced stretching technique. It's usually done with someone else. You can use bands like this in the park for a hamstring stretch, but I said earlier I would show you, didn't I? So what I was going to say is, I don't know if you can see here, but this would be a hamstring stretch. My legs up and I tip back. So something to get this position where the muscles are in there. So what I did is laid down, put my leg up into the band for to get my position, and it is an excellent stretch, I've got to say, different, really good. But what that enabled me to do is to PNF stretch myself without a second person present. There you go. So yeah, PNF stretching, interesting. Look it up. If you are inexperienced, please don't try it on your own. If you're already quite advanced, you've perhaps done it with a personal trainer or someone else, or you can do it yourself, then yeah, give it a try. How to PNF stretch when you don't have a second person around. Thank you.